Okay, we're now with the Sheriff, Darren Hall. Darren, if you could introduce yourself, your colleagues, and then make a statement as to what you've done this year and how things are looking for next year.
Yeah, thank you. I brought our Chief of Administration, John Hudson, is with us. Our Finance Director, Pete Lutz, is here. Our Chief of Corrections, Tony Wilkes, Chief Deputy John Ford, and our Director of Communications and Carla Weichel and Melinda McDowell, who is also with our Communications Division. We've watched the police many years, and numbers are important to bring up here. So everyone else is real busy. So yeah, that's right. They match. So Chief Ford didn't get the dark uniform idea today. So, but very pleased to be here, and in our agency, I think we work really hard behind the scenes to do really good work. And sometimes a day like today gives us a chance to talk about a few of those things. And maybe the most important, because of the season and the reason that we are here, is that we're pleased to report that we're going to be within budget again this year. It's something we take great pride in. When we're given the budget a year ago, we worked very hard, I think, as we have every year, to be here to report that. And as we're talking about next year's budget, we surely want to mention that we will be within budget again. That has not been easy for several reasons. One of those, as we've all been through, and I know you're very well aware, we've taken over 100 position cuts in the last 3 years at various intervals, and we've tried to manage within those cuts each year, and I think we've done a really good job at doing that. But I think it's important for us to try to explain as best we can as to why that is and how are we doing it. We maintain one of, if not the lowest turnover rate in the United States for what we do. And I just want you to know, you've been, as I think you would say, you grew up down in the jails as well. You've been there.
Explain that so the audience doesn't know.
Your own work release. But the environment working in corrections is not the easiest to find. It's not easiest to find good quality people, and it's surely not easy to keep people in this day and age. And so we're very proud of the fact that our turnover rate, our retention rate, is one of the best in the United States, and that saves us a tremendous amount of money. We're not having to hire and retrain and pay overtime when you're losing positions, and so we focus a lot of our resources on our effort to retain people. We also have, I've always said this, and no one's proven me wrong, but we have, if not the lowest overtime budget in the government. It's one of the one in the United States, to be honest with you. We do not take the issue of overtime lightly. We focus and manage our managers. That's how they're evaluated on how well they reduce their overtime, because the way we look at it, we're holding our staff accountable. We should hold our managers accountable to keeping our budget within what we call the overtime amount allocated, very low in our agency. We also have had to consolidate, as everyone else has, a lot of the duties in the last several years. Many things that have been merged together, and for us, we've tried to consolidate functions as we've also had to move inmates around. One of the things that you're very familiar with is our inmate capacity is very low, or our vacancy is very high, I guess.
Your capacity is great, right?
Our capacity is great, and something we've not always been able to say here. We have some 1,100 empty beds sitting here today. That is, without a doubt, the highest, and it's been that way for the last year or so. When years ago the opposite would be true. We'd be looking for 1,100 beds for folks who didn't have a bed, and so very proud of that. And that's a good thing. I mean, it's good for all of us. We've tried to analyze, and we're still working on a lot of this. Why is that? Why do we have 1,100 empty beds in our system? We know there are several reasons. A lot of this is program driven. The 287G program cannot be ignored. We know it's had an impact in our population. We attribute nearly half of those 1,100 empty beds to the 287G program we started in 5 years ago right now.
Explain that. How that.
Yeah, what we've traced back the number of beds that we had vacant 5 years ago to today, and literally this month is when 287G started. And so what we've been able to do is we've traced what was the vacancy of inmate beds when we started till today, and there are nearly 600 empty beds different 2006 till right now. It's very hard to pin exactly that, but other cities that do not have 287G have not seen that decline or increase, either way you look at it, in vacancies. So We're measuring that, monitoring that. There's some nearly 10,000 people who have been removed that had first committed a crime in Nashville and then identified as being illegally in the country were turned over to the federal government. 2% of those people have been rearrested anywhere. We know there's not another program in America 98% effective in reducing recidivism. I mean, we know that's true. So that person is not being rearrested here at any rate of significance at all. And so we know that's a part, if not a large part, of our vacancies that we have. We also are a part of a program called Transition from Jail to Community. Nashville was chosen as one of the 6 jurisdictions 2 years ago. And they've been here, and we've been working with them and the other 6 jurisdictions to determine what is the best connection to the community, what is the reentry components that are important to keeping a person who is released from jail out of jail. I'm very pleased to report we were just recognized and awarded another year of that program here in Nashville. They've been working with our judges and our providers in the community, other criminal justice allies that work here in Metro, and but obviously it's really talking about the arrestee, the offender. How do we keep that person from returning to jail? The recidivism rates of that population in Nashville are significantly lower than other jurisdictions, and we're trying to get, I believe, by the end of this, a complete report on how Nashville stands compared to other cities. I will tell you, verbally, they've expressed that we're the model in the United States for how to deal with the transition from jail to community. It's not just the sheriff's office, but it is our arrestee or our population that they're helping us with. The volunteers and the nonprofit community here in Nashville is, as we call it, resource rich. We have a tremendous resource here in Nashville helping us get people connected back into the community. So we believe both of those, the 287G, the transition from jail to community, and all the programs have allowed us to sit here with 1,100 empty beds in our community. Without those beds vacant, we would not be here talking about being under budget. There's just no way we could have managed without that. So,
if I could, in terms of the transition from jail to community, do you know what the other cities were?
Yeah, Denver was one of them, Orange County, California. I want to say Pittsburgh. There are 6 total jurisdictions, and we've been working with them for those 2 years, and we were just selected to go another year. And the final report will come out. It will be presented to you. My understanding is it'll be later in the fall, but verbally and anecdotally, they've told us that Nashville is, and what they wanted to do was to study all what's going on around the country, and then to come up with what the best practices would be for other cities to follow. They came here, looked at Nashville, and have said many times that our resources, and quite frankly, your monthly meeting you have that we used to call the Overcrowding Committee.
Now call it the
Criminal Justice Steering. Yeah, that's right.
Who's going to release these beds to?
That's right. What are we going to do with the vacancies? So, but they really admire the fact that Nashville brings its players of the system together on a regular basis.
It's long been, predating me as mayor, there's long been a high level of cooperation amongst really all the players in the criminal justice system.
And you know, I think we're spoiled, or I'm spoiled a little bit, because when I hear stories from around the country where that doesn't not only happen, but they can't even sit in a room and have conversations about what's best. We had a meeting last week as a result of your meeting just a week or so ago with Dawn Diener, and talking about some issues that she's really interested in the public defender's office. All the players were there. We're right back at the table trying to come up with ways, and we're not overcrowded. It's really not an overcrowding issue. It's an efficiency issue. How do we find the best efficiencies for our city? And I think we have a great cooperation and a spirit around here about that, and that's evident in what these folks from other jurisdictions tell us. And so we'll be presenting a report to you, I think, in the fall that will summarize the entire 3-year experience. But very proud of that, and I think it will tell us further as to why we have so many vacancies. A couple other things that we are trying to do as a result of those 1,100 empty beds. We have one entire facility that is vacant. It is completely closed. It's a 300-bed facility that was just built, 4 years ago. It's the lower level security facility. We have another half of our women's unit is completely closed, basically lights out on that side, and we still have beds throughout our system. We have put the word out to other counties. There are some counties in desperate need of beds. And with the city's capital already spent on those facilities, we have offered that up to other counties that are interested in renting those beds while we have them vacant. Of course, that would come with a contract through the council, but we've done that before, and we believe there's some potential to bring some revenue to the city while we have this opportunity.
Would you, you know, obviously, jail construction over the course of, you know, as you mentioned this, over really my adult life, professionally in Nashville, we've been dealing with jail overcrowding until just recently. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that previous administration, Mayor Purcell, built some facilities. And all of the facilities we've built, we've really gone into it with a lot of study of population projections. Is there any explanation for why we're down at this point? It's good news to be down 1,000, but why are we down?
Yeah, you know, that's something that another thing I think most jurisdictions don't have, and we didn't have. When I started here, when we were going to those meetings 20 years ago, it was a lot of theory, a lot of anecdotal ideas about why we were overcrowded, and then we were able to, with Donald Blackburn's unit, basically using, I think George Washington University originally was the organization that worked with them to come up with projections, and we'd get these every year through Donna. And the bottom line is, you know, the history and the projections that they're using are based on laws and trends today, and some of those things have changed. 287G is a good example. When the projections were made on the beds we would need 10 years ago, you don't have some knowledge of what may change going forward in our community. So although we watch and monitor the projections used every year, I don't think some of this was forecast, was able to be seen, to be honest with you, with some changes in laws. And it's a good problem to have. I remember sitting here wondering how long would these beds last us. The projections back then, you know, 7 or 8 years ago, would be that we'd be sitting here asking you for a major capital expense to build on, and so.
Thank you. We haven't had to.
That's right. So and I don't believe there was any. I really do believe that the professionalism in the whole industry of projections is very important to what we do. We're using that right now to project for next year and the following year. The expansion of what is the CCA facility that we're able to get done this last year, finally after 10 years of doing the work.
That one is going to expand potentially?
Right. It's up and running. That new unit that you and I.
We spent a lot of time on.
Right. That's been years. And so back then, you know, it has capacity now for the next several years. And of course, Nashville's overall capacity, I think, is well within the next 7 or 8 years with these 1,100 empty beds, some empty beds in the CCA environment. But I think it's important for the city to continue to monitor the projections that not the sheriff's office produced, but that we're all collectively involved with providing data to come up with what are we going to be looking for in the years ahead. A population like juveniles, and these would be bound over juveniles, right. They can really spike and cause us a lot of problems in a facility like we run, or females.
I mean, 4 years ago, or maybe a little bit longer, the big issue was the increased number of women being arrested for felonies, and has that?
It's leveled off, and again, but that's the important part. We're watching that data, then deciding what kind of beds, because in our business, a bed is not a bed, right. And we can't put a female in the male side of the wing, and you can't put juveniles in the adult side, and so we're watching every individual population and using projections to determine what do we need next year, and what are we thinking over the next couple of years is the city's best use of its space, and that's kind of what I was saying a minute ago. We've been watching these vacancies for a year or so, monitoring it to see is it a seasonal thing? We used to go through seasons as it relates to this. It's not, and therefore we're more comfortable talking to other counties about, would you be interested in using these beds while we have them vacant to bring Metro some money back because of the capital expense already there.
Assuming that for the next year or more that the 300-bed facility and then half the women's facility basically are closed. I mean, they're closed in such a way that the investment of the city in that property is being protected, and right. Should the need arise for us to have more people staying in our facilities, right. We'll be able to handle it. So it's a safety valve in many ways. But how many inmates do you house on a daily basis right now?
2,400 probably. We can handle 4,000.
Right. In terms of the, you know, I mean, hopefully there's something works out with other counties, but if we're down 1,100 inmates in our facilities, is there a budget savings there that we can see, or? Yeah,
what we're seeing is the last 3 years we've lost over 100 positions. Right. And the only way we've been able to manage those 100 position losses, and those are correctional officers really is what that is, are shutting down entire wings of the facilities. So in the old days, we'd leave a few inmates everywhere. I mean, now we've moved all the inmates into one unit and have one officer watching all of them and various, the staffing ratio that we should be. The only way we're sitting here within budget is to shut down a 300-bed unit completely and half the women's unit and turn the lights off, so to speak, where we don't have anyone working there. We do have security presence going by to check on it. But without that, there's no way we'd be within budget any of the last 3 years, really. Every time we get reduced in our staffing here, in our budget reductions, we go back and then.
Well, you get reduced over here.
Right over here on the right side. But it's been
I started to doze off there for a minute. Back up.
It's been for us, and again, we have, as you well know, a great relationship with the police department. One of the things that I've always said is we're the bathtub. They're the faucet. The judges and the judicial system are the drain, so to speak, are the release of that. And all we can handle is what they bring to us. And the good news is the numbers that we're getting in the last several years are down dramatically. That helps us because we can then absorb the cuts that we're taking every year here. But that's not always. My staff will tell you, the minute the number starts going the other way, we can't survive on our budget that we're getting today. We're going to be as close as I have ever been to budget this year, ever. And it's getting closer and closer, and that's within.
Well, do you have any sense of what are the projections from the best possible sources of where we're going to be a year from now in terms of inmates? Yeah,
the projections show that it's not ticking up at all. It's staying almost steady across the populations that we are concerned about, females and males, and the adult. Locally sentenced adults are going up. That will not affect us directly. That's the CCA number. It will not affect my population or my budget. I think there's a couple of things, though, that within that concern us, and we're trying to, if we're able to get other counties to contract with us, clearly what that would mean is we would have to have staff to supervise their inmates with a per diem coming back to the county. And we would clearly be in conversation with you guys about that. But I mean, it is of our opinion that if we've got 24 people here and we can put 16 more in that unit from another county, that revenue far exceeds what it would cost us. But it would cost us not additional money than we have today, but we can't be cut more and then bring in more inmates.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of our balancing here is what do we want?
Right. But I guess the question I'm trying to get at is, say we're unsuccessful at bringing in out-of-county inmates. Where does that leave you then in terms of your budget and possible reductions? Yeah,
we would be letting officer positions go that are presently working. There really isn't any more vacant post or vacant officers that we have. And I'm very, very comfortable unless our inmate numbers go down. I mean, we use a thing called a relief factor, and our relief factor is how we determine how many officers are needed per post, and then how many officers does it take to cover that post. The police, fire, other agencies would use a similar thing. We use the lowest relief factor in the United States. It's 1.66. The national average is about 2. And what that really means is to cover this post right here, how many people does it take you to cover that? It's a 24-hour-a-day, never closed operation. We're way below the national expectation to cover the post, and it is extremely, extremely difficult to do that. The only way we're doing it is our vacancy in inmates have allowed us to move all the officers into consolidated areas, but we have no more, we don't find, unless there's more drop in inmates, any more ways to make those savings. Okay. And we've been working extremely.
And how fast could you reopen? If we had a surge of arrests or whatever, how fast could you reopen one of the closed units?
Yeah, it would not be anything from a fiscal plan or anything operationally to do that. The staffing levels and situation, we could do that within 24 hours. It's kind of our nature around here to kind of manage that. We've been talking to Putnam County, for example, some other counties that are in desperate need of beds, and we've told them we can turn that around pretty quickly. Obviously, we'd have to go through the legislation. We've got that in Metro Legal's hands right now in case that turns our favor.
Just sort of on that same line, in terms, if we're going to do this, which I'm obviously very much in favor of bringing in some additional revenue, are we certain, we know what our costs are, so we're certain we're going to be charging I don't want to say a profit, but get some of our capital costs associated with it back, recoup and things of that nature.
Yeah, there's a formula
in terms of doing that. Yeah.
Yes, and to be honest, the federal government kind of has the ownership of that. There's a formula, and I can tell you it would be advantageous to Metro. I think it's surely going to cover that. There's one other piece of this. The conversation we're having now would be if an inmate were to be transferred to Metro on a per diem basis that would come directly to you guys or to the general fund. That's one option we have. There's another one that's somewhat unique that we've been approached and we're working through right now, where the entire facility that is vacant, it's out in the Antioch complex, it's vacant. There's a company that is interested in leasing that facility while, again, be the same issue, we'd get it back when needed, but for them to bid to the state to house, I think it's juvenile female offenders. What would happen there would be a contract where they would pay the county for the lease and the square footage of the building while it's vacant. Another way where we wouldn't be in a per diem, we wouldn't be involved at all. All the revenue would come directly to the general fund. We wouldn't need positions for anything. We're in aggressive conversation right now with them. It's a mid-June thing. We've got Metro Legal involved. We've talked with Rich. I think if that goes forward, that's a win-win-win again. There's no expense to you, the county, other than they're paying you what, you know, the debt service.
For really just an idle asset,
right.
Yeah.
We're having an appraisal on the land, on the actual building, and so that's unique. We've never done that before, but they have been approached by the state of Tennessee to bid to house juvenile offenders. I think they're girls, and they bid on it. They bid on it with this facility as their place to do it, and it'd have to go through the council for approval, but they're well aware of all that. And so there's two different ways we could bring revenue due to the vacant beds. One would be us per diem housing people. The other one would be just letting them use the building until we needed it again, and that may be a year from now, maybe 3 years, but there's some potential there.
Okay.
A little different. Can I mention a couple of little things? This is a couple things I wanted to make mention of. We in the past year we received a thing called the Crystal Eagle Award. It is the only one, the first one in the United States, what they call large jails, those over 500 beds that have everything we do accredited by the American Correctional Association. It is really a neat thing for us. We are what they call a splintered organization. We have multiple facilities. We have a training facility. We have an admin building. We have buildings scattered all over Nashville. And everything we do is accredited, and they recognize that now, and we were the first to get that. Very proud of it. It's not an easy thing. I heard earlier this morning the CLIA standards and accreditation in the police department. This is the equivalent of that in what we do, and it's surely not easy to maintain. I'm very, very proud of that. We've been able to do it through the budget difficulties of the last several years. We also worked very hard in my 10 years down there with national associations, one of those being the American Correctional Association. I'm the first sheriff in the United States to ever be the president of that organization. Very proud of that. We work very hard in getting into the business of corrections. It's really what the sheriff does in Nashville. And very proud of that. I'm also on the board of the National Sheriff's Association, and we work very hard with them, but I'm pleased to report that some of the work that we do nationally I think is paying off here locally. Both of those national associations have signed up to bring their conferences here.
All right.
I will promise you,
You're on message.
I made that a part of my. I made that a part of my.
Taking a few extra minutes.
Yeah. To a total of about $10.1 million, they tell me, and collectively the sheriffs will be here.
No,
June.
You can't have 10.
Yeah, about half is all
I
we're
thought I
asking
better
for.
go ahead and tell you that right now in front of you.
So for all those, but it is. It's a concentrated effort. The sheriffs will be here in June of this year. The American Correctional Association will be the first year of the convention center has signed on. Very, very excited about that, and very, very pleased to bring something back here. One other little thing, kind of as we're approaching the anniversary, the second anniversary of the flood, we've also been a partner of an organization called NAWS. It's North American Association of Wardens and Superintendents. Sounds like a southern term, NAWS, but it's really a prison-based organization, and we had, up until the flood of 2 years ago, we really weren't a part of it in a very aggressive way, and but they realized that some of the folks that were impacted here in this community were our own staff. We had many staff lose everything they owned, and of course in the area out by the prison, became kind of synonymous in the old days with the prison area, and some of those homes, and NAWS found out about that and actually contacted the staff members that work for us and provided them a lot of assistance financially and came here and helped them. And they have a program within the organization within NAWS called Make a Smile. And what they did when Katrina hit was they asked people in the corrections around the country to take a week of their vacation, all concentrated at the same time, went in and then back then built parks and basketball courts and just about anything. And that started it, and so the next year I think they went to Cedar Rapids, Iowa through a tragedy up in that area. And then what they asked us a year ago was, can we come to Nashville? And your office has helped us, the Parks Department, but very excited that here in just a few weeks as we approach the anniversary, the actual week of the anniversary, the Make Smile Foundation is asking these folks to give up a week of their time. It's the week of the anniversary of the flood. They're coming out to Delray and West Hamilton and building an incredible park, greenway area. They're volunteering their time. The Parks Department's kind of helping oversee it, and these folks give all of their time. It's volunteer to pay their way here. We are going to allow them to sleep in this vacant building, which is going to be a nice thing.
Pretty kind of you, let them into the jail.
We will, there is a use for it as we, but it's really going to be a neat thing, and we would ask, I think you're coming out at the conclusion, they're going to name it after the man and woman who perished in the flood, name the park. Just a really nice gesture on the industry that we're a part of that they've asked to come and do. So real excited about that, and it's as we approach the anniversary of the flood. And I got to compliment my staff who behind the scenes since the flood has continued to, as we're sitting here today, is out working with the tearing down of some of the homes and the work behind the scenes. We've done a lot of work with the folks, the water department and everyone else with helping with the flood as we continue to do that. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up was a thing called mobile booking. We had a pilot program just nearly a year ago, and I really think it's been an overwhelming success for the community. It's a great public safety tool, I think, for the police department, and it really reduces their time being down and away from assignment. Puts the booking process in the field with the police department. We were on St. Patrick's Day night, of course, we were out active with them. It's a unit that's actually mobile that can be parked virtually anywhere. And the police are not tied down to bringing people downtown to a centralized booking center anymore. I think it's the wave of the future for Nashville, and a really, really good way for us to decentralize a function that is a really expensive way of bringing police cars and traffic into downtown when we can get out in the field and help them. And I think it's been an overwhelming success with the police officers and the field, the community at large. So just wanted to report that.
Well, and you also have been doing your rides, and you do a lot in the community that you deserve a lot of credit, and your folks do, for just helping the city function on
Thank you.
in a volunteer way, and so we're very thankful for that, and thank you for the great job you do running the jails and everything else that you do. Greg, do you have any questions? Rich?
I'm coming.
All right, thanks.
All right, thank you.
Ready for the baseball season?
Oh, yeah. Ready for it to get it kicked off. That's what we need.